Romans is easily my favorite book in the entire Bible. It's literally the foundation of everybody's faith. It's the full entire gospel and gives you a deep revelation of the cross, of the blood of Jesus, and in our sanctification, in our salvation, in the state of humanity, like all the sin of the world, and how it is that Jesus, through his death and resurrection, saved us from all of that and seals us with the Holy Spirit that sanctifies us into perfection and into peace with God, reconciliation with God. Essentially, I did a full Bible study with this group of people. I did a full Bible study with my friends. It took us a whole year with and the way that Kay described it is like the plumb line, where anything else that you read in the Bible, you'll be able to measure it up to see if it aligns with the truth of God, to see if your understanding of it aligns with the truth of God. Because obviously the whole Bible is the truth, but it is going to give you that the plumb line, basically like a foundation that you can build everything else on. And to me, after going through all of Romans and getting a deep revelation and understanding of it, I really feel as if that's how I experience Romans. Like it seriously set such a foundation. And if I only had one book of the Bible, I would probably choose Romans, hands down. So chapter 1, we're going to start out here. Basically the beginning. So I would say like verse 1 through 17 is basically just kind of stating what Romans is about. He declares, basically he's just saying like, yo, throughout this whole chapter, throughout this whole book, we're going to be talking about Jesus Christ, the power of God, and how through his resurrection, we receive grace and apostleship to bring about obedience of faith, which basically means apostleship is basically like you're a child of God and you're sent on a mission by God. So basically through us having revelation of Jesus and our faith, that gives us grace that brings about the righteousness of God. Chapter 17, so for through the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. The righteous shall live by faith. So it's about righteousness, how it is that God reveals righteous, makes us righteous. And so that's the grace of God, and then employs us as apostles or as children of God sent on a mission in order to bring about obedience of faith throughout all of the nations. So that's what Romans is about. And basically verses 8 through 15, to me, this is just like a letter to the Romans, the people in Rome. And to me, it also just demonstrates the heart that Paul has, truly demonstrating a life laid down, a non-selfish, pure servant of God that rejoices in other people's faith that has nothing to do with him. Like he is just such a man of God that hearing about others following God and Jesus in such a sincere faith, it brings him joy and he rejoices. So it just shows the purity of heart. And then he establishes the most important, in my opinion, precept throughout the entire Romans book. He says that righteousness is by faith, that it's not only by faith, we're not only saved by faith, but we're also sanctified by faith. So that's what verse 17 means. He says the righteousness of God is revealed from faith, so it comes from faith. Like that saying faith to faith, like it starts in faith and it's continued, it's brought about by faith. So our sanctification, which essentially, my best definition of that would probably be the process of from the moment we're saved to actual perfection, where we fully meet the law, where we're fully perfect just as Jesus is perfect. That's the process of sanctification. So we're saved by faith, and then the process of sanctification is by faith. So we go from faith to faith. So the whole thing, faith, it's all by our faith, our belief in Jesus and the words that he gave us, that everything is built off of. That righteousness is built off of. And you actually read in Galatians 5, which is very similar to Romans. People say that Galatians is basically like a mini Romans, but you'll see in Galatians, Paul talking to these people saying like, look, y'all started out really good. You were running a good race by faith, but now you're trying to continue out your sanctification, your perfection by your works, by your own works. It's all by faith. So he's like writing to the Galatians to come back to faith. Like, it's all started by faith. Like, don't continue in your own works. It's going to actually curse you. Okay, so that's verse 1 through 17. So now verse 18 is basically revealing. So he's like, okay, righteousness is by faith. And the reason why we need faith is because it's going to save us from the wrath of God. So this chapter is so key. Like, this first couple verses from verse 18 is basically demonstrating that God, essentially what it's saying is everybody knows about God. Everybody knows about God and about their ungodliness and unrighteousness. It says that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of man. For by their unrighteousness they suppress the truth, for what can be known about God is made plain to them, because of God has shown it to them, for his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world. So what does that mean? It means that basically all men, like I said, know about their ungodliness and their unrighteousness. But the reason why not all men are turning to God is because they suppress it. Their unrighteousness suppresses the truth. So they're basically just shoving it down, even though deep down everybody knows about God. For one, because God has shown it to them. Everything that can be known about God is shown to them, verse 19. And verse 20 basically says that, and if that's not enough, literally the entire universe from the beginning of time has revealed the attributes of God. Everything that can be known about God is revealed literally just through creation itself, through what was made in verse 20. So the world, everyone knows about God. Because like one of the best arguments, I haven't studied this enough to like deliver it very well, but one of the best arguments about God is like, if the sun was a tiny bit hotter or a tiny bit colder, the entire world would cease to exist. Like, it's the perfect temperature, the way it's spinning through the universe, how it's perfectly circulating around the sun. So you look at all those things and how like the animal kingdom, like all the animals are perfectly balanced, how the atmosphere is perfect for us to live, how gravity, if it was a tiny bit hotter or a tiny bit more, we would all be crushed, and if it was a little bit less, then we would just float off into space or something like that. You just look at the perfection of the universe and it reveals the quality of God. And then in this chapter, it discusses basically 6 ways that kind of like the six qualities of unrighteousness, I guess you could say, or ungodliness. And so the first one, verse 18, their unrighteousness suppresses the truth. But because all the qualities of God are revealed to God, then what happens as a result of this? So for each one of these 6 qualities, there's a result, a direct result that happens from that particular unrighteous or ungodly act. So unrighteousness suppressing their sin, they're without excuse because they know God. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, though they knew God, they did not honor him or give him thanks. And as a result of not honoring God or giving him thanks, they become futile in their thinking and their foolish hearts are darkened. So that's why, like basically it's kind of like they become stupid, or like there's just wisdom and qualities of God that they just, their minds reject, and then their hearts are darkened. So like their hearts are hard. Their hearts become hardened, so they no longer feel like guilt of God, like guilt for their sins and stuff like that. But The third one is that they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images, resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. So basically it's like idolization. They exchanged the glory of God and they started worshiping images. So that could be money. It could be like some famous person or like their jobs, or birds. They started worshiping like the created rather than the creator. So God gave them up to the lusts, impurities in their heart, dishonoring them bodies amongst themselves. So evil is always like knocking on the door, and because they no longer worship God and they worship images, God gave them up to the lusts in their heart. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie. So this is kind of similar. So the truth, all the truths, they just, the lies that the enemy fed them, they exchanged those truths for that, probably because it benefits them in some way. So God gave them up to their dishonorable passions. And that's verse 25 through 27. So the fifth thing is they didn't see it fit to acknowledge God. So God gave them up to a debased mind and all manners of unrighteousness. So then it gives a whole list. Maybe I'll just put it right here. So a whole list of all this unrighteous acts, all this unrighteousness. And then the sixth thing is that even though they know about God's righteous decree, which is further solidifying the fact that all men know about the ungodliness and unrighteousness, yet they still practice those things and actually approve of those who practice these things. So even though they know that by practicing these things they deserve to die, says that in verse 32, they still do it. And they actually like cheer other people on for doing these unrighteous things. So to me, the most powerful thing about this chapter right here is you can go through these 6 things and just check your own heart. Like see like, where am I maybe doing these things? Where am I not honoring or acknowledging God, and rather than just worshiping the works of my own hands? And it also just, to me, is as we are sent by God to go preach the gospel and make disciples, it's such a powerful thing to know. To me personally, the biggest revelation I got from this chapter is knowing that everybody knows about God. Because you talk to people that they're like, no, I don't believe in God, blah, blah, blah. But deep down, everybody believes in God. They're just suppressing the truth with their unrighteousness. So there's some sort of unrighteousness that everybody knows about and feels guilty about, and they know that is wrong, but they're doing that. And that darkness hardens their hearts and like gives them a debased mind. Their thinking becomes futile. And so now, like, even on like a conscious level, they might think like, no, I don't believe in God, but deep down, everybody knows about God. So that means when you speak to them and you tell them about God, it's gonna touch that part deep down inside of them. It's gonna touch that part of them that knows that God is real and that these things are gonna lead to death. So that just fully empowers me to preach the gospel, because now like you can speak to these truths and it's in them. You don't have to prove that God is real, because everybody knows that God is, basically. So, it allows you to speak with confidence too. So, but yeah, that's chapter 1. I'm going to go through all of these, every chapter.